What's the secret of the magical island where the strangest creatures live? And what's the hidden story from Susie's mysterious past? And how did the show reach its ending? Let's dive together and uncover all these secrets in this full recap. Let's start millions of years ago. Before existence, stars, and Earth appeared, friendship was the most important thing in the universe. It created time, and time became tied to the length of friendship. There was a rabbit who lost all his friends. He felt sad and brewed a potion that grants eternal life so he'd never lose anyone again. But no one drank it, and when time realized he'd cheated and messed with its nature, it got angry with him. So the rabbit fled alone to the dark side of the moon to live there forever. And after several millions of time, when creatures got used to living outside the system of time, one day an old monster was walking alone, then suddenly turned into a small child, and moments later turned old again. It was super confusing because time wasn't flowing naturally. There wasn't a straight timeline. And one night, two monsters were sitting around a fire cooking a simple soup. Suddenly, time itself appeared, drawn by the smell of that tasty soup. Then it made a deal with them. In return for serving that soup on one set night each year, it would push time forward steadily, like an arrow. And as time moved on, Barb was born at 60 and wanted to help everyone fight the bears. But a chain of misunderstandings made things complicated, so she was exiled to a mountain peak. There, she found a lake of pink liquid. After she drank from it and spoke to a fern, she got the idea to put all the island's bears to sleep. And as her reflection shimmered on the pink surface, little dwarfs that looked like her began to pop out to execute the genius plan. But a donkey, a sheep, and a goat arrived to steal the lake's liquid, taking advantage of the bears' absence who used to stop them. When Barb found herself cornered, she sacrificed her ability to sleep to stop them, meaning the enemies slept forever in exchange for her never sleeping again. At the moment of her decision, the pink liquid froze and turned into a source of immense magical power. And then, the moon thanked her. And as millions of years passed before the cartoon begins, when magic was spread across the whole world, we meet Susie, a little witch from England living in a simple house with her parents, who gave her sweet news. Soon she would have a little sister to play with. Time passed and the baby was born, and they named her Mildred. From the day she was born, Mildred showed a magical talent beyond Susie and a striking ability to use her powers. But despite that great talent, she held a force she couldn't control. She caused sudden climate changes that annoyed all the neighbors. So the family had to travel north to the Arctic, hoping to find a liquid that would tame that power. As they left, the parents asked Susie not to reveal the secrets of the journey until they returned when she turned 15. That was the age they planned to come back with that liquid. They left the two girls and set off on their trip, leaving them under the care of their extremely strict grandmother. So they decided to run away together to London, hoping to get a ship ticket and go search for their parents in the Arctic. And of course, they were just two children with no experience and no money, so failure was inevitable, and they ended up with a witch named Mary, who offered them a safe shelter in exchange for selling corn for her at the model. When Susie's 15th birthday finally came, she was waiting for her parents to return, because witches at that age have a special right with precious items to become full witches. While selling corn, Susie received a bottle called the Bottle of Immortality. Then Mary arrived carrying a letter telling her that her parents got lost in a snowstorm while trying to come back. Susie decided to drink from the Bottle of Immortality, so her birthday would keep going until they returned. Then she went back to her room and found Mildred trying to help her with the rite, but since she couldn't control her powers yet, the precious items turned into frogs. Susie got angry, decided to tell Mildred the whole truth, and blamed her for everything that had gone wrong with their family since the moment she was born. Mary stepped in to stop the fight, took Susie somewhere quieter to talk calmly, and performed an improvised ritual to make Susie an official witch. When they returned to the room, they found it empty and the window broken. Mildred had run away at night, casting choppy spells along the way, afraid her unstable powers might hurt someone, while Susie started searching for her. The next day, news of Mildred's unstable spells spread through the town, and people turned against them, so they decided to run and look for her across the city, with the whole town chasing her. And because of a misunderstanding, they thought Susie was her sister and wanted to burn her instead, so they fled London, heading to the United States. As for Mildred, she was alone in the forest. She met a ghost and talked with him for a long time, and she realized the best thing was to go back and explain her side. When she returned, she found no one and thought she was now left alone. Mildred decided to board a ship to the Arctic to look for her parents, and she traveled with her ghost friend. But the problem was they kept falling asleep, so they missed the right stop several times, causing chaos in several countries, until they finally reached the Arctic. Arctic. Unfortunately, when they arrived, she didn't find her parents, so she felt sad. And then a white wolf came close and said to her, "If you want your sister to love you, give me your magical powers. You'll be better off without them." But when the ghost learned about it, he advised her not to do it, and even so, she was about to throw her powers into the sea. However, they went to a cabin, and there, Mildred placed her powers inside glass jars. But that act made her lose her memory, so she wrote a letter to herself asking her to protect those glass jars, which she's still guarding to this day. After the two sisters were separated, Susie moved to Massachusetts looking for a home and a job, so she worked at a clock shop. Every morning she went to the harbor with her frog, waiting for her sister Mildred to return. One day a man showed up with a newspaper saying a girl had caused chaos, so she realized it might be her sister, and she set off on a long journey around the world that lasted 80 years, but she didn't succeed. She felt discouraged until one of the orphans came and gave her advice to regain her focus and feel her sister's presence. Then she headed toward the Arctic, but she noticed Mildred's energy was starting to fade, so she could no longer feel her. She thought her sister hadn't drunk the immortality potion and had died, even though she'd believed the whole time that she had drunk it. After many years, Susie became an important witch on a global level, and it was a true honor to serve as a witch for the community. Tasked with politics and administration, considered the mayor's right hand. But civilization was moving fast, and because of the Industrial Revolution, magic was replaced by machines. They were much cheaper and way more efficient than any magical creature. That led to magic fading until people's memories slowly started to erase everything related to magic and witchcraft. And since there was no magic left in the world, they fled to the sea on a small, isolated island. There, with what remained of Susie's power, she built a ship and set a plan to summon the remaining magical creatures to the island. But this effort drained everything she had left, until she forgot she was a true witch. Luckily, a girl named Ramonda found her, a young magic apprentice, and tried to help her remember who she was. But Susie didn't remember. So Ramonda steered the ship and tricked Susie by pretending they were going out for ice cream. When they reached the island and Susie fell, she started to remember who she was. And by a lucky coincidence, they met Barb and told her they were going to save magic. But Barb told them they first had to reach the crystal she herself had moved millions of years ago and that had frozen there. The road wasn't easy though. Once they entered the island, the monsters of the future would take them over. After a long, exhausting chase, Susie discovered that burping is what defeats those monsters, so she used it to fight them. But the monsters managed to capture Ramona and suck away her time so quickly that she aged to 15. Then Susie saved her and escaped with her to a small hideout where creatures lived that helped them reach the crystal. There, a mysterious being appeared and told them the prophecy was about them, that two close friends would save magic, and he gave them a tome with a sequence of instructions to save magic. Relying on what was in that book, the witches decided to set up their own special school on the island with 10 girls. Among them, 2 stood out clearly: Emma and Mallory. During training, they were supposed to work together to gather little ghosts scattered around, but one of those ghosts possessed Mallory because of her weak commitment to practice. The other witches couldn't expel the ghost from her, so Emma had to make her sneeze hard so the ghost would fly out. Then she kept it in a vial to use later in her experiments. The experiments were simple at first, like trying to revive a flower. After that, the book moved on its own and told the witches a new witch would soon arrive on the island, and this witch would be the 13th. And on the next page, they found a message revealing the true way to save magic, which meant the goal was closer than ever. The next morning, a new girl named Betsy arrived, carrying a tennis racket she used as a magic wand. But she didn't know the real reason she came was to become a witch. She thought her mother had sent her to a reform school, and even though she really wanted to be a witch, she couldn't control any kind of magic. So her friends advised her to level up her skills, to find someone she trusted to help her, and she chose Alice, one of the 10 witches, so she could develop her magical abilities. After finishing the training, the witches decided to start carrying out what the prophecy required. They all raised their wands toward the book, and a bright magical envelope shot out. Susie tried to open it, but inside wasn't the secret to saving magic as they expected. It was a cryptic line that said, "The witch who lives forever must stay in the present, while the witch who ages must remain in frozen time to carry on the mission. The meaning was clear and shocking. The two friends had to part ways. Susie wanted to ditch her fate and tried to convince her friend to take her place in the present, offering her the rest of the immortality potion. But Ramona convinced her that everything would be fine and that they had to follow the prophecy as it was. And so the witches graduated officially, while Ramona left for frozen time, leaving Susie a precious gift. After a long time, Alice came to Susie's cabin to ask for advice, but Susie was worried about her immortality, about all the things she could no longer enjoy because of it. While they were talking, Alice explained that while she was lying down, she suddenly burped, and a ghost came out, telling strange stories. Susie explained what that meant. Those who live forever are always haunted by their unresolved past, taking the shape of ghosts that appear through their burps. After that, Susie went out to get rid of her own ghost, the one that represented her problem with Ramona. But that ghost wasn't ready to leave so easily, so she decided to take it to the place where her adoptive parents' ghosts live. There, she finally managed to say goodbye, and then went back home to rest. Meanwhile, the witches took advantage of Susie's absence to mess around and prank the Yeti, but things got out of hand, causing a massive avalanche. Even though everyone made it out alive, Betsy, who still hadn't mastered her magic, survived only by pure luck and ended up lost in the forest. There, she met the ghost that represented Susie's problems, and they spent some time together, sharing fun and heartwarming moments. During that time, Betsy also met his parents, and even played tennis with him before it was time for him to leave and move to another island. He took that moment to confess that he liked her, but Betsy couldn't answer him because she'd accidentally hit the ball too far. When he went to get it back, he ended up at Susie's door. Annoyed by him, she erased his memory so he wouldn't remember her issue with Ramona, but the result was harsh because he also forgot Betsy completely. Betsy started to worry since she hadn't seen her friend for so long, so she went to Susie's house looking for him. There, Susie realized her big mistake, but still decided to keep her secret until this very day. As the years went by, the island's magical power started fading little by little, and worse, the witches couldn't perform their rituals anymore. The reason was Susie's deep depression after Ramona's departure. Still, she kept in touch with her through a special time mirror, and during one of their talks, Ramona told her that a new prophecy had arrived, one that revealed the magical archives had ordered her to bring new creatures from New York, beings who didn't even know they had magical powers. At first, Susie refused because of her sadness, but Ramona promised that if she completed the mission, she'd finally be able to break free from frozen time and reunite with her. That's when Susie agreed and headed to New York, following magical signals across the city in search of those creatures. In one restaurant, they noticed a girl whose voice sounded exactly like the Yeti's, even though she looked completely different. So they approached her to see if she had any magical powers. But since she'd been living among humans, she had no clue about her true nature, and the conversation didn't go well. That's when they came up with an idea to create a fake summer camp on the island, a way to gather all these magical creatures and convince them to join. So they started spreading invitations all across New York. And sure enough, Susie completed the mission and came back to the island with the magical beings. She rushed to tell her friend the mission was a success and asked if it was finally time to leave the frozen timeline. But sadly, Ramona was nowhere to be found. Instead, Susie found a shocking letter revealing that leaving frozen time was never real at all. She'd been tricked just to complete the prophecy. Heartbroken and furious, Susie ended her friendship with Ramona and reluctantly prepared to welcome the newcomers to the island, the ones she named the New Campers. And this is where the real story of the cartoon begins, when our main characters, Oscar and Hedgehog, finally arrive on the island. But before that, let's rewind a bit and talk about their childhood, back when they were just 6-month-old babies in New Jersey, where their friendship first began. Around that time, Hedgehog's mom gave Oscar a tiny telescope and some weird, unknown object. He loved it instantly, and they played with it together all the time. Oscar always liked to share, but Hedgehog's mom wasn't really into that idea. Their friendship kept growing through school. They always had each other's backs, and on one special day, during the first day of summer, Oscar comforted Hedgehog when she was scared after losing her first tooth and the tooth fairy didn't show up. Somehow, he made her smile again and calmed her fears. When they turned 6, they went on a camping and canoe trip with Oscar's dad. That's when he told them the creepy legend of the Jersey Devil, along with the signs that mean it's nearby. Later that night, their canoe flipped and all their stuff got soaked, so the 3 of them had to sleep outside under the stars. The kids tried to stay calm and rationalize the spooky signs, but in the morning, their sandwiches were gone, and of course, they assumed the monster took them. That little story stuck with them for years. Oscar's relationship with his dad was a bit strange. His dad cared, sure, but he was always busy, and there was this huge gap between the way they saw the world. Oscar was imaginative, sensitive, and adventurous, while his dad was realistic and traditional, always playing it safe. His relationship with his mom, though, was much warmer. She was kind, supportive, and very much the classic, caring mom type. Oscar depended on her more than his dad because she just understood him better. As for Hedgehog, most of her connection was with her mother, since her dad barely appeared. Just an ordinary man like most grown-ups. But her relationship with her mom was complicated. She was rational, realistic, and always expected Hedgehog to live up to her standards. She was strict, sometimes too strict, which made their relationship a mix of love, tension, and pressure. When they grew a little older, their parents decided to send them to a summer camp on an island, not knowing it was actually a magical one. On the car ride there, Oscar was buzzing with excitement, ready for adventure, while Hedgehog was super nervous about being away from her parents. But as always, Oscar's supportive energy helped her calm down. And finally, the kids arrived at the summer camp on the island, alongside a bunch of other campers, under the supervision of the 3 witches, Susie, Betsy, and Alice. Once the adults left, the witches changed their appearance completely, and suddenly the whole island transformed. Trees, rocks, even the sun itself started moving and talking. That's when the kids realized this wasn't just any camp. This was a magical world full of surprises and strange creatures. In this world lived beings like fairies, witches, frogs, and even the Yeti. Over time, the campers got to know the 3 witches better. Susie stood out as the most dominant, bossy, harsh, especially toward Oscar, whom she saw as a spoiled little kid. Betsy, on the other hand, was cheerful, kind, and full of energy, but a little reckless. At the camp, there were plenty of other kids, like Max, Lucy, the girl they'd seen earlier at the restaurant, and a little boy named Pepper. When Oscar first arrived, he couldn't handle the whole camp idea. All those strange magical creatures and Susie's harsh attitude made him freak out, so he decided to run away. But on his way out, he stopped to think about everything that happened and remembered Hedgehog, how she always cared for him. That thought changed his mind and he decided to give the camp another shot. That same night, something unbelievable happened. His pajamas came to life. From that moment, life at camp started to get way better for Oscar and Hedgehog. They went on tons of adventures, meeting the island's weird and wonderful residents one by one. There was the Yeti named Saxophone, the Alien King, the Fairy Barb, and a bunch of quirky monsters named Edward, Howard, and Mortimer. They even met the old ghost, Betsy's ex-lover, who slowly started to regain his memories. But then, Hedgehog got some bad news from her mom. She was being transferred to another camp. It crushed her, so she made sure to spend her last day with Oscar. The 2 of them sat by the beach, watching the sunset in silence. The moon noticed their sadness and felt sorry for them, gifting them a magical moonstone that could freeze time, letting their final moments together last longer. The moon also sent them tiny pink baby creatures for company, and after 3 months of frozen time, the clock finally started ticking again. That's when they were attacked by creatures known as the Shiverwalks. They ran off to hide in an old cabin deep in the forest, where they met Ramona, who had been living there. But soon after, the time beasts found them again, and in a desperate move, Oscar threw the moonstone into the ocean, breaking the time freeze and restoring everything back to normal. The story ended on a heartfelt goodbye. The next morning, Hedgehog stood up to her mom and finally convinced her to let her stay at camp with her friends. Later, they stumbled upon an old photo showing Ramona and Susie together, dated 1892, a shock to everyone. A few days later, Ramona invited everyone to a dinner ceremony honoring time, the very being that allowed time to move forward. But during the ritual, Oscar forgot to add salt, which made time furious. The entire timeline started glitching, and Oscar began jumping across different points of his past. Eventually, he reached the exact moment he'd made that mistake, fixed it, and restored balance, bringing everything back to normal. After that, Hedgehog decided she wanted to to learn magic, so she asked Betsy to be her teacher. But during her lessons, she fell for Max, which completely messed with her focus. On her final test before earning her magic wand, Max was chosen as the subject, and she couldn't concentrate at all. So she decided to confess her feelings, but Max told her he didn't feel the same way. Even though it hurt, Hedgehog pulled herself together, came back stronger, and finally earned her magic wand. But soon after, she started using it recklessly, and Susie, furious, took it away from her. Determined to get it back, Hedgehog followed Susie and discovered something shocking. Susie was meeting with all the magical leaders of the world in a hidden city, accessible through her basement. That city was filled with creatures who didn't mind abusing magic, but Susie warned them about Hedgehog's wand, afraid history would repeat itself, just like with Mildred, who had mysteriously vanished. So they decided to throw the wand into the ocean. Then Ramona appeared, revealing that she was the one who asked Betsy to teach Hedgehog, meaning Susie was responsible for her training. Susie didn't like that one bit, so she started assigning Hedgehog ridiculously hard tasks that had nothing to do with magic. Things stayed that way for a while, until Ramona stepped in again, telling Susie to take things seriously because the fate of the prophecy was at stake. That's when Susie cast a spell on herself, forcing her to admit the truth to Hedgehog. She told her she saw incredible potential in her, that if she studied harder, she could become a truly powerful witch. And that moment filled Hedgehog with hope and pure determination. As time passed, everyone's relationships started to improve. One day, the kids were forced into quarantine. The wild bears on the island had woken up and were roaming around outside. That night, they discovered that Susie was sleepwalking and had wandered off without realizing it. So Oscar, wanting to prove he was brave, went out to rescue her. Their adventures never stopped. They even attended the alien king's wedding, and Hedgehog got bitten by a young she-wolf, turning her into one herself. Even Oscar ended up trapped inside the body of a tiny horse one day. On another full moon night, Susie made a shocking discovery. Betsy was actually a werewolf too! Even though Susie hated those creatures, she chose to overlook it out of respect for their friendship. Later, Oscar went to therapy because he felt lonely whenever Hedgehog wasn't around. There, he opened up about their past and admitted he had a huge crush on her. Not long after, Susie's pajamas told everyone the story of Susie and Ramona's past, helping the whole camp finally understand why Susie acted the way she did and where all that negativity came from. As things calmed down a bit, one of the most interesting moments came when Oscar and Hedgehog became temporary rulers of the alien kingdom, while the real king and queen were away on their honeymoon. After that, the friends helped Lucy unlock her magical powers, teaching her how to connect with the Yeti and join their family. That's how she discovered what she was truly capable of. Then came another twist. Oscar was threatened by a ghost after accidentally opening a door for him, which the ghost took as an insult. He sent Oscar to a manners school, where after many lessons, the ghost tried to reach into Oscar's head, something Oscar found extremely disrespectful, so he stormed off and left. Meanwhile, Hedgehog discovered magical seeds that could let her see the future, but when she used them, everything went wrong. The future turned out terrible, so she went to Susie for help, who told her not to worry. What she saw was just one of millions of possible futures. Later, Hedgehog visited a broom maker to craft her own flying broom, but she couldn't get the hang of riding it, so she went to the Hall of Mothers, where she met her ancestors, including her great-grandmother, who had struggled with the same thing. Her grandma helped her learn the right way to ride, and Hedgehog finally soared through the sky for the first time. Then there was Pepper, who accidentally discovered his own magic, the ability to turn into a cloud and fly across the sky. As the story moved forward, Hedgehog got invited to join a big sports event, but Oscar didn't. Still, he wasn't jealous at all and told the monster hanging out with him that he was fine with it. The monster led him into a room filled with bottles containing special scents, each one bringing you back to a specific moment from the past linked to that smell. Oscar inhaled one and was suddenly transported into one of Mortimer's old memories, back when he was at Harvard, and saw how heartbroken he was for being rejected from a college club. With just one sneeze, Oscar realized how sad Mortimer truly was, so he decided to go back in time to help him. When he did, he found out that the university had super strict rules banning emotional expression. Oscar stood up to those rules and encouraged everyone to express themselves, even founding a club for it. When he tried to return to his own time, it didn't work, so he went to a witch who promised to help if he could convince the ruler to change the anti-emotion law. He actually pulled it off. But then came the twist. The witch didn't know how to send him back. Luckily, by pure chance, Oscar sneezed again, and just like that, he was back in his own time. After that, Susie helped Oliver discover her own power. She took her on a tour around the island to test her abilities, but nothing worked. Still, the story hinted that Oliver might actually belong to the monster kind. The next day, Susie also helped Alexa uncover her powers, and that's when they realized she was actually a giant. We also found out that Lim had no magical powers at all. She wasn't even supposed to be at the camp. She'd snuck in using a fake invitation just to stay close to her sister. She spent the day with Ramona, then finally confessed the truth to Susie. But instead of getting angry, Susie invited her to have breakfast with her. Then came the 6th and final season. The story opened with Oscar performing a magic show, but it didn't go well at all. The performance went wrong and split Susie's body in half. After several failed attempts, they finally managed to fix her, though her legs refused to move properly. Feeling lost, she went to her friend's house and admitted how much she missed Ramona. Later, Hedgehog woke up in her real home and realized that everything she'd lived through had been part of a magical test, a dream world meant to challenge her. She managed to break free and fully awaken, finally becoming a true witch. Meanwhile, Oscar snuck into a monk temple just to make himself a peanut butter and honey sandwich, and that's when he discovered his best friend was now officially a witch. At the same time, Susie was preparing a sky funeral, one she had always wished Ramona could attend, and when they finally reunited, the two performed the ritual together and made peace. But suddenly, a powerful magical storm appeared and pulled them both inside, only for them to realize that the storm was actually Mildred, Susie's sister. Susie quickly cast a containment spell and sealed her inside a pendant around her neck. After that, Ramona and Oscar went to visit the mysterious space rabbit, worried about the storm trapped inside Susie's necklace. The rabbit had been living alone on the moon for ages. At first glance, he seemed strange but harmless. He promised to give them the cure, but only if they stayed for dinner. During the meal, he began telling his story, how he once created the potion of immortality to preserve friendship forever. But as expected, his real plan was to trap them on the moon with him for eternity. Luckily, they caught on just in time and managed to escape before he could seal them away. But things got worse. The plan failed because Susie had opened the package too early, causing the vial to slip and shatter. So she assigned Hedgehog and Oscar a new mission, to find the witches who had vanished before the camp even began. After a long journey, they finally succeeded. Once everyone was back, Susie held a grand gathering for all the witches and told them her entire story, everything about her sister Mildred. When Susie realized her sister's spirit was still trapped inside the storm around her neck, she decided to perform a powerful ritual to open a gateway to another realm and communicate with her. Outside, her friends held tight to the rope connected to her, and that's when Susie's spirit separated from her body and entered the portal. Inside that realm, Susie saw someone familiar from afar. It was Mildred, but much younger, and the closer she got, the more Susie's age began to reverse. Her memories faded, her childlike mind returned, and eventually, she forgot everything, even the rope. She let go and went off to have dinner with her parents. Now, Susie was living a completely normal life in an alternate reality, one where her sister never developed her powers, her parents never left, and the family was together again. They even performed the 15th birthday ritual just as they'd planned, without ever needing the immortality potion. Outside, her friends were growing anxious. Susie wasn't responding, and her body was slowly turning to stone. They tried to contact any nearby witch who could help. By pure chance, Mildred heard their signal on the radio. She rushed straight to the island. When she arrived, Oscar and Hedgehog greeted her, but then a zebra and and a sheep appeared and tried to eat her magical jelly. They revealed that they were the ones who had tricked Susie into entering that alternate world, planting the illusion in her mind from the very beginning. Barb quickly stepped in and teleported Mildred away before they could capture her. Mildred wandered through a ghost-filled forest, but with their help, she regained her memories and made her way back, where only one of Susie's fingers hadn't yet turned to stone. They discovered that midnight was the perfect time to perform the ritual and save her, with help from the moon. Using a clever trick, Mildred entered the spirit world and found her sister in that same illusionary life where they'd grown up together. She possessed her older body and helped Susie realize that everything she was living was fake, an illusion created by her own heart. Then Susie noticed the notes she'd written to herself, reminding her of the rope's location. She grabbed it, pulled hard, and returned to the real world in a powerful, emotional reunion that finally brought the two sisters back together. But just as everyone started celebrating, the thieves struck again, devouring Mildred's magic completely, leaving her powerless. After that, Oscar's parents arrived on the island to visit him. Susie quickly rushed to hide every trace of magic so they wouldn't discover the truth about the place. She told Oscar that time works differently on the island. While 129 days had passed there, only 1 week had gone by in the real world. During a baseball game with his parents, things spiraled out of control. The kids accidentally started using magic without realizing it, forcing Susie to shut all magic down completely. That shock was too much for Oscar's parents. They were so stunned, they literally fainted. Later, when Susie tried to bring magic back to the island, she discovered it was gone, completely gone. That realization broke her. She became anxious and overwhelmed, unable to do even the simplest things, like taking off her own shoes. Meanwhile, Betsy reunited with her old ghost lover, but he didn't remember her, so they started getting to know each other all over again. Outside, the storm was getting stronger, but Susie quickly realized it wasn't just any storm, it was the ancient cyclone itself. She ordered everyone to take shelter in the basement, while she decided to face it alone. At the same time, Hedgehog believed the only way to bring magic back was through a manual key, so she and Oscar sneaked off through a secret tunnel in search of a way to restore it. Susie tried to fight the cyclone but failed, forcing her to retreat to the therapist's cabin. There, she met Oscar, who convinced her to sit down for a therapy session. That's when she finally admitted the storm wasn't just a storm, it was a manifestation of all her unresolved pain, so she and Oscar teamed up to face it once more. But this time, Susie realized it wasn't about her current problems at all. It was about her 15th birthday. That day had shaped everything. Oscar comforted her, reminding her she wasn't a bad person and that she needed to apologize to her sister so they could both heal. Together, they confronted the cyclone and reached Mildred. Susie apologized to her, tears streaming down her face, and Mildred forgave her with a smile. The moment was so heartfelt that the storm itself faded away completely. Then something incredible happened. Time itself appeared before them. He told Susie he never held a grudge, that he'd only come in response to the call she made on her 15th birthday. He offered her and her sister a choice, to give up their immortality. They both agreed, finally ready to grow, to live, and to be human again. After the ritual was complete, they laughed, they cried, and they celebrated the gift of feeling alive once more, before peacefully falling asleep side by side. The next morning, Susie gathered everyone, her sister, Oscar, and all their friends, for a new ritual. Each one placed a part of themselves into the spell, marking the start of a brand new era of magic. And just like that, the magic returned, the creatures, the powers, everything. As the sun set, they all sat together, smiling as they watched the horizon glow. And with that, the story came to an end.